You're listening to SBS News.
Paula McGowan believes her son's death could have been prevented. Oliver, who had autism, died in the UK in 2016 at age 18 after medics gave him an antipsychotic drug that he'd asked not to be prescribed after previously suffering a bad reaction. Miss McGowan says this time it killed him.
And he was given this drug and it caused his brain to swell so badly it was bulging out the base of his skull. So it dawned on me that the doctors and the nurses, they didn't understand autism. They weren't trained in understanding autism.
Before moving to Australia in 2018, Miss McGowan launched a campaign to have medics undergo mandatory autism training. She began a petition which gained 51,000 signatures, leading to it being debated in the British Parliament. The bill was passed successfully with no opposition in October last year. It's now in the consultancy stage, with experts working out how best to implement the compulsory doctor and nurse training across the UK.
I'm now in the stages of producing this training for every member of staff that works for the National Health Service. So that includes cleaners, porters. Everybody will get a level of training.
Miss McGowan and others are now pushing for a similar strategy here. The calls have the backing of new research led by the University of New South Wales, which examined the cause of death of 36,000 people with autism in New South Wales. Professor Julian Trelaw from UNSW's Intellectual Disability Mental Health Department led the research.
We found that people on the autism spectrum died at a rate twice that of the general population. So the presence of mental health conditions, complex physical health conditions, and the presence of epilepsy and nervous system disorders.
Professor Trelaw says his team found that the top causes of death were different for people on the autism spectrum.
We found that the biggest, most common cause of death for people on the autism spectrum was in fact deaths due to accidents, poisoning and injuries, which includes deaths from suicides. We found particularly that in people with autism alone, 50% of all deaths were related to this category of death, compared with only 13% of such deaths in the New South Wales general population at the same time. We also found that deaths from nervous system causes, such as epilepsy, accounted for 20% of all deaths in people with autism. In New South Wales, in the general population, this figure is only 2%.
Almost 164,000 Australians have autism. That number is up almost 40% from 2012. Nicole Rogerson, the CEO of Autism Awareness Australia, says while it shows we're getting better at diagnosing the condition, this latest study reveals a need to improve the way we treat it.
In 10 to 15 years' time, we're going to have a hell of a lot more adults diagnosed with autism than we do now. So if this is a problem that's this big at the moment, it's going to be enormous in 10 years' time.
Kathy Isaacs was diagnosed with autism in her 40s after she discovered her son had the condition. She wants to see doctors treat people on the spectrum in a similar way to a patient facing a language barrier.
What we really need, more than anything else, what we really need is for doctors to be aware that we're going to be presenting, we're going to be saying we have these chronic health conditions, we have pain or we have other forms of illness, and they need to know, first of all, to listen to us, how to listen, how to get information from a patient who's finding it difficult to explain.
Those on the front line of autism are calling for a national strategy, so as Miss McGowan puts it, no parent has to lose their child in the same way she did. Abby O'Brien, SBS News.
If you enjoyed this, you can find more SBS features on our website or from your favourite podcaster like iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher or Whooshkaa.